No.
Okay. But the appointment on my calendar, which should be on all of your calendars as well, well, it reflects all of the committee members. And it was for 1 o'clock, from 1 to 2:30. So I guess you can decide how much longer you want to wait for the other committee members to join. But
I'm okay with waiting a couple more minutes, and then I think Phil and I will be the committee if no one else shows. Or we can move it to another day if that's what we want to do, but
okay, whatever you decide.
because we're merely going to discuss and then make some sort of recommendation for a further discussion with the board members,
Correct.
right?
Correct.
Essentially. So, oh, Ron Frazier is joining now. Good. Hello? We still on?
Yes, I'm still here.
Oh, okay.
I'm here.
I've seen some texts that Gretchen sent. Ron Frazier is joining now. Doug Kuhlman is in Michigan and should be joining if he can. He's concerned with his Wi-Fi. So, okay. All right, why don't we start?
Okay. How many of us are on the line?
Oh, is that Mr. Frazier?
Yeah.
Oh, good. Okay, we never heard your name called out. We were waiting for you.
I apologize. Yeah.
No problem.
Couple of minutes. Okay.
It's no problem. And I don't think Doug Kuhlman's going to be able to get on. He was trying, but I don't think he will. If he does, we can kind of bring him up to snuff. Do you guys all have the form, the performance review form that was sent as an attachment to prior email?
Yeah, I have it.
Bill, I assume you do too?
Yeah, I have it.
Okay. So what I'd kind of like to do is kind of read through each section or category, and because some of it I think applies, and there's a few things that it's hard for me to rate because I don't know if the definition, if it's something that I know anything about. For instance, there's one that discusses how she encourages and supports the development of employee skill sets. I'm not around the staff enough to know that, or if we maybe want to word it differently, or how do you guys feel about that?
Mr. Chair, this is Angela Wallace. If I could for just a moment, for purposes of the recording, can we just kind of indicate that this is the committee meeting, an Oversight Board committee meeting for the purposes of a performance evaluation? So performance evaluation subcommittee meeting, and it is September 24th, 2020, and we're beginning, I guess we'll say at 1:15. It's 1:19 now, but I know we started a few minutes ago, but just for the record, so that the recording will reflect what these proceedings are about. Thank you. You can go ahead.
Thank you, Angela. I appreciate that. So, anyway, what I think we can do is just start at the top, and then if you want, I can read it out, and then...
Just as a caution, Alan. Hello?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, just as a caution. The purpose of the performance evaluation is to measure somebody's performance against a predefined set of objectives and professional development objectives, as well as performance objectives. Since we did not do this last year, we need to be careful that we're not trying to evaluate what we're trying to evaluate her on, since we did not have those defined objectives for her to meet.
I agree. And so there's a few of these things that I think identify some performances that we were able to, that I think we could say, yes, she did this great, or she did this, she could do better, or whatever. And then I think we might want to look at some of these categories and either set the bar now for next year, or rewrite them a little bit so that it fits some category that we think is better suited for us to evaluate. So if we want, we don't have to rate them right now. Maybe I just read off I think there's 5 or 6 of them, and then we can... Yes,
Mr.
sir.
Chairman, before you read it off, remember, I didn't come on the board until January or February, so there were some sessions that I missed that I'm not aware of her performance level, so I need to put that on the record. Number 2, I don't know whether her job description was sent out, so I'm not aware of what her total job description is, and whether or not, as you said, whether all of these items fit what her job description is. So I just wanted to put that on the record.
Yeah, that's good point. So,
Alan, Doug Coleman, can you hear me, Alan?
hey, Doug, glad to have you join us.
Calling in late.
How long you been on?
I just heard you just say a few words, and Fraser, and I'd like to ask a question, because I read this independent administration performance review thing 3 times and still don't know how to use it. Am I the only one?
No, you're not the only one. I don't know how to apply these percentages.
I tell you what, all I can say is I know what achieved expectations and more and a 4 mean, but she's somewhere in the 4 to 5. But what I did with it and what I multiplied it by made no sense, especially when I got to the part that says, add the weighting levels for all competencies. Total weights must equal 100%. And then that really lost me. So I don't know what we do with that. But
My experience with this performance evaluation tool in the past is that recognizes that certain jobs have different weights as to particular factors or performance objectives. And so the evaluator then either, assigns heavier weight to, let's say, leadership or communications or workforce development. Because of some of the uncertainties relative to what the past expectations were, I have just used, a straight 20% for each one to come to the weighted totals.
So we have 6 items: leadership, communication, public focus, workplace development, strategic, and results focus. There's 6 things. How do you can't give them 20, or that's 120%.
Maybe I missed something. Leadership, communications, workforce development, analytical, strategic thinking, and results focus.
Well, there's also public focus above that. So there's 6. There are 6 areas.
Maybe I missed that one.
Okay, well, that if I was to assign them the same or slightly different, I would, for me, that's an alarm I set to make sure I call you guys.
So I think that, I hear what you're saying. I think that there's probably, first of all, my form has an X where it says weighting level, and I don't know if that's trying to tell us not to weight it, just rate and give them an overall rating and weight it equally, I guess. I don't know why that X is there.
That X is just there to show that was not predefined what that level was.
Gotcha. Okay. So if we want, we can go through them now on a heading basis and decide, not necessarily the definition of the heading, just in order to get us kind of going in the direction of figuring this out. We got leadership, communication, public focus, workforce development, analytic, strategic thinking, and results focus. And I'll just kick it off just to get it started. In my opinion, leadership, communication, and possibly results focus maybe, or because we want results, right?
Right.
Showing leadership's a big deal. Public focus is, I think that there might be 3 or 4 of these that maybe weight equally and heavier. I don't know how workforce development is, how we're going to be able to analyze that.
Right.
And analytical and strategic thinking, I don't know how to analyze that one either. So I'd like to hear how you guys feel about some of these.
I'll jump in on one thing. I think probably leadership. That's one of her stronger points in my. I personally believe she's also very good at communication. She's certainly focused on the public aspect. And I don't know, results focused. I would eliminate workforce development completely. So I'm down to 5 things. If I was following Phil, I'd be 5 20s, although I think leadership and communication are probably higher than 20. You see what I mean? So I have to cut somewhere else. That's the way I would approach it. I also, when I looked at this form and I read the first page that talked about 1 through 5, I think she falls somewhere in a 4.5 personally as a general job performance. I'll be quiet and let someone else speak.
Okay. Anybody else have some thoughts?
Again, I go back to what I said earlier on relative to that we didn't have a predefined set of objectives for her to meet, and that we spend not too much time on digging into the nitty-gritty of each individual leadership role or results focus, etc., but to really spend more time in deciding what we want her to do in the coming year. And then we just do an overall evaluation of her performance over the last year and a half, as perhaps as a way to shortcut this process.
I tend to agree. I agree with you. I think the only way we're going to do something that measures against something is to set a standard this year, and I agree with your approach, Phil. And I think we might want to spend some time on thinking about what's important to the Oversight Board in terms of goals, right? Is that where you're going?
Yeah, that's it.
Okay. All right.
With that said, that means we're going to set our goals for next year so we can do this a little easier next year, but we really have to address this year, right?
Well, this is not going to impact her retention. It's not going to impact her salary compensation, because those are not within our purview as a board to say. It's really more of a personal growth as with relation to her relationship between the board and her and Gretchen.
Well, and I think it kind of also allows us to, in as much as we audit the performance of so many other things, the staff and her as the leader of this department that supports us, we are auditing her performance and how that, and I think that's important because we are spending, money is being allocated, whether we pay it or not. And so I almost feel like it's a reaffirmation of whether or not we think the performance is at a level that meets our expectations. And so, I mean, we can approach it and one, rate her equally on every category for this year. But I would like to talk about what's important to us in the coming year. So let me just throw one out that may either be in here or might not be. Public focus, to me, getting the marketing out there and the word out to the public is important to our efforts. And maybe we want to write it a little differently, but I think it's more of a marketing thing and a public relations thing. And that's one thing I know I've heard from our group over the past couple of meetings that we wanted to see more of. And I know there's other things in here. I think Ms. Pennant would probably say, and that because she says it a lot, that reaching out to local businesses and making sure that the small business, the reach and the success of communicating the opportunities is probably an important thing for our board. So I'll just kick it off by saying I'd like to add, I'd like the public focus to be more defined as marketing and public outreach that delivers the message of what the Oversight Board is, the Surtax is doing, in not only delivering what we're doing, but how we could bring more transparency to the public, to our community, something like that.
Can't you get that there by talking about a performance objective to complete some predefined level of the public communications plan that is being developed that we've asked for and the board funded?
Right.
That we're going to have a discussion on later anyway.
Later today.
And I had, just to find maybe, since that's a 5-year plan, that we pick some component that we think is important to be completed within the next fiscal year, such as an example, the branding. I think branding comes before a lot of the other issues, and that is a significant undertaking in itself.
I agree, and I think we're going to get a presentation on the status of that, because that was one of my comments, is what is the status of our branding, and that whole thing seems to be going slower than we'd like, and I think we're going to hear more about it today.
Right. You should have received materials for the overall, campaign that was submitted at the board's request, at the commission's request, based on our letter to the commission for the budget for this coming year. And I think there's a lesser defined version of it on our agenda today. So I think we've all said that at the last meeting when we were talking about budgetary comments for this coming year, and we had, as a board, said that was a major focus of our efforts.
So what I did was, just now listening to you, Phil, under that category of public focus, I put, and we can change it any way we want, we can get help from staff if we want, but I wrote 2021 goal under evaluators comments, and I wrote bring forward and implementing a marketing public outreach program starting with branding. And we can elaborate more into that goal as we want, but that gives us something to grade on going forward, and we can edit this any way we want to. I'm just trying to take some cues from what you guys are saying and typing them in. Is that kind of in the right direction?
Yes, I think.
This is
yes, Mr. Fraser.
Yeah, for me, for this year, I can only deal with the leadership, communication, and public focus, because that's primarily what I heard since I've been on the board, and I only came in, I think, in January, more or less February. I think going forward, you got to put some items on the results side, and some of the things that you're putting on the public focus may also end up in the results side.
That's true.
Of course, I think what we're trying to do is give us some objectives to accomplish based on whatever our plan is, the 2021 plan is. These are certain things that you want to see some kind of accomplishments in. To what degree, I guess you have to spell that out. But it gives a target and it gives us something to live by.
I agree. I think this is going to take a little more time than what we might have anticipated. Get this right.
This is a very complicated form. So going forward, are we going to do a two-part situation here? Pick out, let's say, 3 categories that's on this form that we got now, and just looking at an overall evaluation rather than doing all this multiplication and stuff, and say, you know, we think the student has done X for these 3 categories as it relates to right now, and then going forward, you add some goals and objectives that you want to see achieved.
Yes, and I will tell you that one of the things that's important to me, typically in a business or in some sort of program like this, is how we quantify our results. And maybe that's what that results thing is all about, but and clearly defining any of the audits or the financial breakdown of the budget that the county set and how it's communicated to us in a project, quantifying it on a project-by-project basis, which we've been working on. We did that in last year. We developed the dashboard. We also, when we were evaluating the different projects this year, it was broken down. At first, it was more of it was kind of broad brushed, and the board said we wanted to see it more on a project-by-project, detail-specific, and I think that was an objective that we wanted, and it was delivered this when we did the 5-year plan. It was more detailed, and so delivering detailed evaluation what would I say, material for the Oversight Board to evaluate projects moving forward. Those kind of things are important to me, and how they're listed, how they're detailed, how they're itemized. That kind of stuff makes it easier for us to do our job and to be able to understand how the surtax is being spent. So if someone can help me kind of define that, I'd be very appreciative. In some sort of category.
That might be a little difficult, but adding to what you said, Mr. Chairman, I think we need to be clear about what's under her control and what's under the municipality's control and other agencies. And sometimes that can get muddled, and we assume that the Oversight Board has authority to do X, Y, Z, and she has it, but it really falls on the part of a municipality to implement it. And the only role we may have is to make suggestions and those kinds of things, but really can't direct how well they do the implementation of a particular item.
Well, that's the situation.
No, I know, but she does, the staff does provide us with information in which to evaluate all the different projects, whether it's city projects or if it's just surtax projects. We get information from staff, and it could be as simple as just telling us they're going to spend $200 million this year, or it could be as detailed as, here are each of the projects, here's how much we're spending, here's the detail of what the scope of work is, and this is the location in which we are implementing it, and which is what they did this year. But when we first started, it was a little more broad-brushed than it is today, which means that staff and Gretchen delivered on our request of breaking it down into more detail. And I think as we go forward, whether it's Gretchen or maybe 3 or 4 years down the road, Gretchen jumps ship for a better job or something else, she moves on in her career, and we get a new director, well, we have this category here that says defining, again, I'm trying to come up with a category, but because I would typically put it under financial reporting or project administration or something like that. But it's just how they communicate. Maybe it's under communication. How they communicate the projects that are being brought to us for our evaluation in a clear and detailed format, something like that.
I agree with that.
Alan,
I have worded something along those lines in defining it as develop matrix to communicate timeliness of project objectives. We saw part of that at the last meeting that goes live on October 1st, their cost accounting system that will allow them to track budgets by specific projects, and to add to that is what was the predefined accomplishment for that project and how well is it being carried out.
Doug here, I just want to make a comment. In going back to what I thought our main charge was evaluating her performance, I would have to say that almost every time we asked for something to be done, it was taken care of. And I think it was taken care of very well by her and her staff. I'm still a little confused about, I understand why we're setting goals, but I don't know that was what this session was supposed to be. So are we, and if we have to do that, it's going to take more than an hour. What do we absolutely have to do today? Because I look at the email from Gretchen and the backup that she sent, and I find that stuff contradictory to what Phil said, and we're responsible for evaluating her, and they're going to use that evaluation to set her salary. Is that correct or incorrect?
No, that's not correct.
Okay.
She is an appointee of the county administrator. The county, and she serves at the direct pleasure of the county administrator. So it's the county administrator that, frankly, defines in her mind what compensation will be or retention will be for the employee, not us as the board.
So our obligation is to advise the county administrator based on this form we have,
right,
what we think she's doing.
This form is not something that is mandated for us to complete. It's something that I think Alan asked for as a method, and I think some people may be involved in organizations where there is a direct relationship between the board that makes the appointment of their employees versus this compensation or this organization where their staff is assigned to us to support our efforts, but not so much to directly affect their retention or hiring or termination. So I think our communications to the county administrators would be along the lines of, generally we are satisfied with the performance of the MAP program office headed by Gretchen. Maybe there are some exceptions that we may take. There are some concerns that I have, the things that did not necessarily get carried out on a timely basis that I would like to see corrected in upcoming years. But overall, though, I think, with the organization, she was assigned to us from the startup of the board and led us through the organizational needs and the first set of objectives in the 5-year plan. Now becomes, administering that plan and planning for the future, bringing new technologies new approaches to that. Also recognize that this is a matrix organization in that Gretchen does not have responsibility or authority to direct either county agencies or cities as to what they are to be done or what is their performance to be. That is left to the board to make that determination as to whether we are satisfied with the direction that's being taken, and to bring up issues where a project is lagging or a project is not meeting its objectives. Those are appropriate roles for this board, I believe.
So, I think kind of playing off of where Doug is, if we wanted to try best we can to rate her under these different, leave it at equal weight and rate her under these different categories, we could do that. Down below, there are professional development objectives for the upcoming rating period, and then there's performance objectives. I think we probably could put some of the, we don't need to call it professional development. We might want to call it just objectives for upcoming rating period, and add some of those things we talked about. And I think we could certainly add evaluator comments under these different categories as best as they can fit. For things like you talked about, Phil, if you had any questions or comments that maybe something could have been done better or that could be done better in the future, we can stick those under comments just to get a rating at this point for Gretchen. And then I think at the bottom where they've got those openings to add objectives, we just add in those things we've been talking about. Is that okay? And then I think what we need to do over the next couple months is probably develop a more accurate list of categories. Can we do that, or?
This is Angela, and I guess one suggestion that I would make is that a determination be made regarding what the rating would be based upon, the rating as opposed to or against what. So since there were no predefined objectives, the question remains regarding, so rating as opposed to what? And that's kind of...
So, for instance, if you were to ask me over the last 2 years, from 1 to 5, how has Gretchen's leadership been? And then it says, develops and uses effective strategies that demonstrate fiscal responsibility and leadership styles to influence and respond to the community, and building an organizational capacity for rapid change, and exhibits flexibility in anticipating and conducting business. You know, I'd probably put her somewhere between 4 and 5. So, based on what I've seen over the last, it's been a year and some months. And then I would just do that again under communication, public focus. I would just do the best I can reading these definitions, and I would just rate it. And then I'd probably, because some of these overlap, it sounds like, but I don't know if I would weight it more under any one than the other.
The only thing I would disagree with you there, Alan, is if I look at these 6 items, I just don't think, I don't know that workforce development is certainly to me is not as important as leadership and communication, okay? So if I just took these 6 items and I tried to rate them 1 through 6, what's the most important or the least important, then I would put the percentages accordingly, as opposed to just making them all even. But that's just the way I would, if I had to use this form, that's the way I would use it.
Well, and if I could edit this form, I'd probably delete workforce development or I'd put NA. I can't really evaluate that.
I understand
right now. So
the problem is if we let's just say, what is it, 6 into 100, it goes how many times?
12 and change. Or 18 and change.
Goes in there 16.7 times, okay? So if you gave them all the same, they'd be 16.66 percentage. If you gave workforce development out of curiosity 0, would that hurt her in her rating? Can anybody answer that? In other words,
No, it won't hurt it. You
if
just
you
do
gave it a, huh?
You could give it a 10 or a 5 or something. Give it a 10 and give the others something that's equal to, whatever.
No, I'm saying that let's just, in order to understand, what is this? If we have to do this, and if we have to fill out this form and give that information back, I don't know first of all, is that the case or not? Or is this form something that was just given for discussion purposes? Anybody answer that?
Angela, can you answer that?
It's my understanding that that is the tool that county administration uses for executive performance reviews, and that's why Ms. Cassini provided it to the committee.
Okay.
But you may want to spend some time, as you're doing now, reviewing to determine which aspects of that form apply to the services that are performed on behalf of the Oversight Board, and possibly narrow it to specifically focus on the objectives that the Oversight Board would like to see prospectively. And to the extent that you don't believe that you can evaluate a given category over the past year and a half, then because you don't feel like that falls within the activities that are performed for the Oversight Board, then perhaps those would be eliminated, such that you narrow down the categories to specifically the activities performed on your behalf, and determine how to score those various categories.
Again, I go back to the issue that we don't need to be tied to this form.
Right.
This form is something that would be completed by the county administrator and her or deputy or whoever in response to or in evaluating the performance of Gretchen. We are certainly privy or involved in knowledge of how she performs in her interface with us, but not necessarily as it relates to the overall county performance. That's why I would say that we really don't need to limit ourselves to the predefined levels here, because it really doesn't fit between the board, that she is our assistant or assist board in making our determinations, rather than performing to meet these particular objectives. Our objectives made as a board on how we efficiently operate could be completely different than how the county operates.
But Phil, that sounds inconsistent with what Angela just told us we were supposed to do.
No, I don't think so. I think that was actually consistent. What I'm suggesting is that the Oversight Board may want to modify that document or extrapolate the categories that are included on that document to devise another tool that it more appropriately lists the objectives of the Oversight Board based upon the specific activities that are performed on behalf of the Oversight Board. Because that particular tool is one that's used countywide for executive evaluations for county management level personnel who report to the county administrator. However, all of the categories and all of the detail within the categories and that particular tool may not be applicable to the activities provided on behalf of the Oversight Board. So you can use that as a starting point and extrapolate the applicable sections and add other categories as the Oversight Board may deem appropriate for matters that specifically address Oversight Board activities.
I think what we should do, honestly, I don't know if I want to fill this out today. I think we need to chew on this, and as a committee, we need to spend a little time determining categories that we believe fit within our scope of the board's objectives and what we do. I think we need to develop something.
Let me just throw something out on the table here, Alan. An approach that would open it up to more board members' input to do this as a workshop type of thing, where Gretchen and staff and the board meet, determine what needs to be accomplished this coming year, and use that as the evaluation method going forward, so that each board member has an opportunity to lay their concerns on the table rather than just this small subcommittee.
I think that is a great idea, and I can tell you that with the DDA, the Downtown Development Authority, about 4 years ago, we did exactly that. The board met on a workshop. Jenny Morahone had just become our executive director, and we laid out 5 important categories and objectives. And we evaluate her every year on that, and it can change. But all the board members had input, and we had a meeting specifically on that. So I think that is a fantastic idea, and I think that's what we should probably do. It'll help navigate us as well, and keep us focused on what the objectives of the board are. So we just have to determine when we want to do that. We could make it part of the October meeting. Angela, is this a time-sensitive thing right now?
No, I don't believe that this is a time-sensitive matter, no.
So I'd like to bring it up today in our meeting, and then let's set some time aside maybe for October, because I know we've got a full meeting today. Let's set some time up in our October meeting to where we can do something like that, Bill. And we set, and I think we can do it fairly easily just by what we're working on.
Let me just throw out, the county has resources of employees that can guide us as a board in doing that.
Oh, so you mean organizational development, the Office of Organizational Development, Phil? An exercise?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. So we can contact the organizational development to determine whether we can have a facilitator available, or when a facilitator would be available to conduct such a workshop with the Oversight Board. I know for your meeting that begins, your regular meeting that begins this afternoon at 2:30, one of the items on that agenda is this topic, the performance appraisal. So what we can do during the meeting this afternoon is indicate what the committee discussed during this committee meeting with regard to scheduling a workshop with a facilitator to determine board objectives prospectively, and in an effort to have a evaluation tool to measure performance by prospectively. Okay?
I like that.
Okay. All right, we'll work on that. So,
and I think this is a more valuable tool than just analyzing Gretchen. I think it helps with our board too and keeps us focused. So I think it'll pay off. Great, good idea, Phil.
Okay.
So, and I'll tell you, if I were going to evaluate Gretchen at this very moment in time, I would say that she's done a really good job, considering the fact that we are new, considering the fact that we have had some, you have growing pains in the first year, and it's not easy to start something from scratch, which says a lot about our board members too, and their commitment and the time we've put in. But I would rate her very high. My satisfaction has been very good, but let's move to that next stage of evaluation. Is that all right? Can we just
Sounds good.
Okay,
okay?
can propose
And we
that.
can end this meeting, and we'll talk about it in the next meeting. It starts at 2:30.
Okay, so the committee meeting is adjourned, Chair?
Yeah, if everybody's okay.
Okay.
Okay, and then the entire board will convene for its regular meeting at 2:30. All right,
Yep.
it is currently 2:03 PM. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. Appreciate your time.
Okay.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
afternoon. Okay,
This is Ron Frazier.
okay, we're going to go ahead and get this meeting started. Ms. Pennon is now in the house, so we're happy to have her. So I'm going to call the meeting to order on the Independent Transportation Surtax Oversight Board, Thursday, September 24th, 2020. So we're calling the meeting to order, and if we could do a roll call, please.
Can you hear me? Okay. Thank you. Alan Hooper,
Here.
Doug Coleman,
Here.
George Cavros, Phil Allen,
Here.
Dr. Kelly, Consuelo Kelly, Ron Frazier,
Here. Here.
Anthea Pennant,
Here.
Did you do Doug Coolman? Phil Allen, did you do Phil?
Mr.
I'm here.
Cavros is trying to connect.
George Cavros, Consuelo Kelly, Allison Love,
Here.
Chair, we have a quorum.
Very good, thank you. Okay, so, I don't believe anybody signed up for part.
I didn't hear my name, but I'm here.
Hello, who's this? Oh, Shay Smith is the one we forgot.
My apologies, Mr. Smith. Shay Smith,
Oh, no, that's quite all right. I just want to acknowledge that I'm here.
thank you.
And just for the record, George Cavros is on.
Thank you, George.
I wasn't sure if you heard that Allison Love is on as well.
The what? We have you, Miss Love. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so nobody has signed up for public participation, so we're going to move into presentations, correct? So the first item is the Surtax Audit Presentation 2019.
And Mr. Friedman, if you would be so kind as to let me know when you need me to advance your slides, we'll go ahead and get those queued up.
Okay. Good afternoon, everybody. This is Brett Friedman, partner with RSM. Happy to be here with you guys this afternoon. We have two items. So first, we're going to start with 2019, which is the PDF that Gretchen shared with you this morning. So Gretchen, if you can go to that document, just to page 1 of the document, there's certain required communications. This is related to the 9/30/2019 audit, which we completed and issued the opinion as of March 26, 2020. So I'm just going to walk through those quick communications. We had provided this letter back right when the pandemic started, so not sure if it got out to everybody, but I'll just walk through. So first thing is we did the audit in accordance with generally accepted auditing standards. We did it in accordance with the arrangement letter dated July 15, 2019. Again, the focus of the audit was on the fund financial statements of the Surtax Fund, which is a major special revenue fund of the county. Going down, we had provided a letter back when we started the audit, and we met with the advisory board just to give you an overview of the planned audit approach. Based on the nature of the financials, there's really no significant or unusual accounting policies. In the current year, there were no significant or unusual transactions, no significant accounting estimates, no audit adjustments or uncorrected misstatements. Also, as part of going through the audit, we did not encounter any disagreements with management with regard to the application of significant accounting policies. There were no issues as far as the nature of the application of GAAP by management. Also, we were not aware of any consultations that management had with other accountants regarding audit or accounting matters. No significant difficulties. And also, as part of the audit, it was concluded with an unmodified opinion on the fund financials for the Surtax Fund. And also, there were no findings or management comments with respect to the fund financials. So with that, if there are any questions regarding the 2019 audited financials, I believe you have the financials as well. Yes.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, sir.
Phil? Could I ask Brett, when did you complete your field work on the audit?
Field work was completed in late March. The audit opinion date is March 26th, and that coincides with the conclusion of the county audit as well, since it is a major fund of the county.
Okay, so the opinion was also dated March 26th?
Yes.
Okay. And that was for the fiscal year ending September 30th of last year?
Correct. Yeah, and it was finished in a somewhat remote environment due to the pandemic, but yes.
Well, I can understand, the impact in many organizations of the pandemic and what that's done. But in your view, is that time frame a normal time frame, or when can we expect, and maybe we'll get into that when we get into your pre-audit work plan for this year's fiscal audit. I guess my concern that I'm expressing here is that we are now 1 week away from finishing 2020 fiscal year, and we're just now talking about the audit from last year.
Right. Yes, and that we'll get into that in 2020. But the intent is, again, obviously, the next year you'll see in the plan for 2020, it will be issued much sooner. But we'll get into that when we go to the 2021 plan. There's a slide that speaks to the timeline.
Okay, I'll come back to that when we get into this year's audit.
Okay.
But overall, I guess I did have one additional comment. The opinion was a clean opinion on the statements that were prepared by management and audited by LSM?
Yes, correct. Clean, unmodified opinion based on our audit. Correct.
And that there were no management letter comments regarding the activities of the Surtax?
Correct. Nothing that came to our attention during, and again, obviously 19 was a short year because there wasn't a lot of actual activity, but no issues that came to our attention in our testing.
Okay, but you did not issue a management letter on this statement, but on the county as a whole?
Right, because it's a major special revenue fund of the county, so similar to what is done with the major enterprise funds for the county. If there were any management comments, they would all be part of the county management letter because that's the overall legal entity.
And the management letter was also dated March 26th?
Yes, correct.
Okay, thank you.
Sure, you're welcome.
A question on that one, Mr. Chair?
Go ahead.
Hello, this is Mr. Smith. Brett, were there any other comments that didn't rise to material weakness or significant deficiency? I mean, anything that came up, even value-added comments or anything about setting up the fund and the first year of operations with internal controls surrounding that, or anything else that maybe didn't make it to a management letter, just considering that we're stakeholders?
Yes, I mean, there was obviously some back and forth discussion with regard to the financials because they were the first time they were presented. But as far as the actual controls, since they follow the same control system as all other county operations, there were no new control structures or things that had to be put in place, and no separate discussions that were needed over the accounting for that.
Well, you found in setting up this fund that those were then properly applied here as well, I guess, because it had to be integrated in some way to stand up this fund. Got it.
Yes. Yeah, no issues.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions?
No?
Okay.
So is that it for that line item? So we can move on to 2020 if you'd like to, on the audit plan.
That one, Gretchen, if you have the other slide deck, either the PowerPoint or the PDF, either one, and we could just start out at the beginning there with the introduction.
Okay, I do have the slide. I have the slide up, and I'm in the table of contents at this point.
because I'm watching it on the YouTube channel. It's hard to see, but
Is there a way
okay.
is there, Gretchen, is there a way to put that out on the screen here? Okay, thank you.
Okay, so now we're on the introduction. I hope everyone can see that.
Well, I can't see it, but I'll talk you through it because I have the copy here. What I see on my screen is just a picture of Mr. Allen. I'm not sure if I'm picking up the YouTube channel right or not, but we can continue.
If everybody can mute, please, except for the gentleman from RSM.
Okay. Just want to first emphasize, again, audit quality is always our number one priority when we plan the audit.
I believe I just muted that line. If your line is... All right, if your line got muted, you will have to dial #6 to unmute yourself. I apologize, it's *6.
Brett, would you please dial *6 to unmute yourself so we can continue the presentation?
And when you're not speaking, if you could just mute yourself on your phone, that way we're not hearing all this extra background noise because there is quite a lot coming through.
Okay. Can you hear me?
We can. Please go ahead.
Okay. All right. So again, audit quality is number one. We try to do a robust challenge of the key judgments in preparing the financials. We try to make sure that we have a strong understanding of the internal control environment and also make sure that it's a well-planned and delivered audit that raises any findings. And as Shay mentioned earlier, even any concerns that are discussed would be raised to those charged with governance. If you could move to the next page, please, the executive summary. Just again, this document lays out the audit planning process and is communicated to both the Board of County Commissioners and to this independent transportation surtax oversight board. The scope of services on the next page, again, we are going to perform an audit of the county's transportation sales surtax fund level financial statements, as was done in 19. Again, it's going to be fund level financials. Just want to emphasize that on the next slide, effective communication between our firm, the board, and the oversight board and the county itself is critical to ensuring that we have an efficient and effective audit. Gretchen, I can see it now. If you could advance to the page on communication, page 3, please.
I believe you may have a bit of a delay. We are on the communication slide.
Oh, okay. Yeah, the YouTube channel seems to go slow, but I'll keep going. And just want to emphasize here, obviously, the important thing is communication. Please feel free to reach out to us at any point, throughout the year. We're here to respond to questions and take your input as we're going through the process. Moving on to page 4. We will timely communicate to you any of the following items if we come across fraud involving management and other fraud that causes a material misstatement of the financial statements, if we come across any illegal acts, any instances of noncompliance or abuse that come to our attention unless they're clearly inconsequential. Also, we'll communicate to you, as we did in the 2019 close, if there are any disagreements with management or any significant difficulties encountered in performing the audit. We will also communicate at the end if there are any significant deficiencies or material weaknesses identified in internal controls as part of the audit. If we could advance, if you can go ahead and advance, Gretchen, to additional required communications.
Done.
At the conclusion of the audit, we will provide any significant findings resulting from the audit. We will provide you with our views about the qualitative aspects of the accounting policies applied. Again, if there are any uncorrected misstatements or any audit adjustments, we'll communicate those to you. And also we'll provide you with a copy of the signed representation letter. On the next slide, just want to affirm that our firm, RSM, and all our employees that work on the engagement are independent in all respects with regard to the county. We have no financial interests or relationships that would impair independence. Next, just to go through, just want to briefly mention the concept of materiality and planning and executing the audit. An audit by its nature is not meant to be a 100% review of every transaction. So, materiality is a matter of professional judgment, and it's affected by our perception of the needs of the users. We look at both quantitative and qualitative factors when identifying what we consider to be material. That's used in our judgment to help us to perform, to ensure the audit is that everything is fairly stated in accordance with generally accepted accounting principles. Now, what that says, though, is it is possible that there could be items that are not selected because, again, it's not a 100% selection of activity. It is just basically using materiality and testing a sample of information. The next slide I'm going to touch on is the basic users, Gretchen. That is slide 8. Just want to clarify for everybody again clearly, the users of the financials are intended to be the citizens, taxpayers, bondholders of the county, any federal or state awarding agencies, also the Board of County Commissioners and this Oversight Board, and also management. With respect to this Oversight Board, it's our job and expectation to assist you in your oversight responsibility by helping you to discharge your corporate governance by reporting to you, as we've discussed, on the results of the audit. Moving on, Gretchen, to slide 10. Just want to point out that management's responsibilities, first and foremost, management is responsible for the preparation of the fund financial statements for the county's transportation sales surtax. They are responsible for establishing and maintaining effective internal controls over financial reporting and compliance. They're responsible for ensuring that the fund complies with all laws and regulations. They are also responsible for making all financial records and related information available to us to audit. Also, they're responsible for making any adjustments to the financial statements to correct material misstatements and affirming to us in a representation letter the effects of the uncorrected misstatements aggregated by us and that they are not material to the financials. Also, they are responsible for maintaining compliance with the provisions of all grants, agreements, and other relevant contracts. Moving to the next slide, slide 11, the purpose of the report and responsibility. Again, just to emphasize, our report is to go ahead and help the Oversight Committee by providing the results of our work and our internal control observations. We are not doing a test of internal controls. We're testing controls as part of the financial statement audit. What we don't do is it's not designed to identify all matters that may be relevant. Clearly, we follow standard audit guidelines and testing, but again, it doesn't involve looking at 100% of activities, and it doesn't necessarily look at everything from an operational perspective, which I know later on the county auditor is going to talk about operational audit work. Again, we welcome feedback throughout the process. If there are any areas of concern or things of that nature, if you'd like to either share it with me now on the call or feel free to reach out through Gretchen and contact us at any time. And also just reach out directly to us. We're happy to address any concerns. Going to the next slide, Gretchen, on deliverables. This is on page 12. At the end of the audit, we will be issuing our independent auditor's report on the fund's basic financial statements. Again, we can't ascertain or commit to whether it will be a unmodified or modified opinion, but we will issue an opinion on the statements. Also, we will provide a manager's representation letter, which will be attached to the communication to you. That will include all key representations that they make to us as part of the audit, and we'll provide this overall communication at the end of the audit to the Board of County Commissioners and the Independent Oversight Board. Going to the next slide, and again, I apologize because the YouTube seems to be going slow, so I can't see. I'm looking at the audit timeline on page 13, and just want to make sure, Gretchen, that you're there because I know this was what Mr. Allen was asking about. So are we on page 13 on the audit timeline? I want to make sure that's clear.
Yes, we are.
Okay, thank you. Okay, just to highlight, so we're here talking with the Oversight Board. We will be beginning field work in October, and the field work will be performed in October and November. During that period, we'll be having status meetings, bi-weekly meetings with management to ensure the timely completion of the audit for the Surtax Fund. We expect to have the exit conference in late November and be prepared to go ahead and finalize the reports by the end of November to have them presented at your board meeting occurring in December. So again, as a follow-up to Mr. Allen, so the plan for fiscal 20 will be to have the financials and the results of the audit presented to you at your December board meeting.
Could I interrupt here, Brett?
Sure, of course.
This is Phil Allen. What is changed to provide for that exit conference and management letter and financial statements by the end of December? What are you doing, or what is the county doing to speed that up over what our experience was this year?
Well, just that last year, again, I don't want to speak, for them, but I know last year was their first time preparing the financials, getting it ready. This year, obviously, all that is in place. So there is an expectation. It's a fund to the county. There's an expectation that we'll be able to just go in, do the audit testing now that it's a year later, that we'll be able to do the testing timely, and they'll be able to provide us, because the timing is all depending on when they give us the draft financials. But it is the expectation we'll have the draft financials in time to review and issue in November. So,
but excuse me, I don't understand, though. The county has been producing annual financial statements for 40 years, and I don't understand why there is a difference. Was it because of the establishment of the Surtax Fund? Did that cause the delay in getting the statements to you to be audited?
Well, that I can't necessarily speak. I know that there was obviously delays in the timing of when the work began, if you recall, when we went to the board and then started, but I can't speak. I know it was obviously, they created these financials, these specific fund financials for the first time ever last year. So it was brand new, and obviously they're doing it at the same time as they're doing the regular county year-end close and everything else. So I just know that in talking with them, they've committed to us to be more timely so that we can issue more timely and meet the target timeline of December. But I know, again, I think last year because everything was new, but I would more defer to them to give any more specifics, but that's our understanding.
This is Angela Wallace. I just wanted to note that the Oversight Board meets, our standard meeting date is the fourth Thursday of the month, and since that will conflict with the December holidays, the fourth Thursday in December would be December 24th. Therefore, we are likely to not have a December meeting, and I think the Oversight Board plans to meet in January of 2021, not in November or December of 2020 because of conflicts with the holiday.
Gretchen, did you have something you wanted to say? Oh, okay.
Okay. Well, with regard to that, we can clearly have it ready for you for that January meeting. Then, if that's the preference of the board, we can have it available for them if there's no meeting in December.
Mr. Allen, do you have any more questions?
No, that's it.
Okay, go ahead.
Just continuing on, again, we provide in here the audit methodology. I'm not necessarily going to walk you through all that. It goes into detail, the whole process, from planning and risk assessment through to the fieldwork testing and conclusion. Again, it's just a standard audit approach. Just to emphasize on slide 18, Gretchen, you move back to there, just highlight fieldwork because that's the core part of it. I'll just hold on a second. I'm looking at the timetable on the YouTube channel. But, we will confirm any account balances. We'll perform account reconciliation testing, perform test of details, vouch significant transactions, and review the draft financial statements as part of final field work. Just going to the next slide, the areas of emphasis for the audit will be to update and document the understanding of the internal controls of the key processes, which in this case are cash receipts and disbursements, The routine processes are cash receipts and disbursements, revenue recognition, purchases and accounts payable, and property and equipment management. Non-routine, if there are any transactions, any significant or unusual contracts, we will look at them to make sure that they're accounted for properly, as well as any interlocal agreements that might have accounting issues. The next section walks through the significant accounting areas. Won't really go too deep into detail on that, but just to say again, our focus, because of the nature of this fund, is on both the revenue side and the expense side. That'll be the focus of our testing. Slide 22. Slide 22 is fraud considerations and risk of management override. Just wanted to indicate to the board that we are responsible for planning and performing the audit to obtain reasonable assurance about whether the financial statements are free of misstatement, whether caused by error or fraud. Our procedures related to SAS 99 include brainstorming that we do internally as a team to identify potential areas of risk. It includes gathering information to potentially identify areas for risk, looking at computer-assisted testing of journal entries, making sure that there's no security issues with the IT systems, performing walkthroughs and testing controls. Also part of the process is inquiries of various members of management at the county, and also, of the Board of County Commissioners and the Oversight Board. So I'll ask you, I realize this is a public meeting, you don't need to say anything now, but if you have any concerns or anything with regard to fraud or suspected fraud, again, you can either share with us now if you'd like, or feel free to reach out to us directly, either directly or through Gretchen, and we'd welcome any feedback from you with regard to that. Again, those considerations. The purpose of our audit is not to audit for fraud, but we do factor that into the audit approach if there are any concerns that you have. Now, at the conclusion of management, we will ask management to confirm in writing that they have disclosed to us the results of their own assessments of the risk that the financial statements may be materially misstated as a result of fraud, and that they have disclosed to us all information in relation to fraud or suspected fraud that they are aware of and that affects the entity. With that, I'll open it up if there are any questions as far as the audit approach or methodology. I'd be happy to answer any questions. I know, Mr. Allen, your question on timing I addressed, but if there are any other questions, happy to address them at this time.
What are the other touch points that we will have from here through on in terms of through the issuance of the audit? Is that set up in advance?
We don't have anything scheduled. Again, I would defer to you as the board. Again, we are available to meet with you individually or to come to subsequent meetings if you'd like. We would defer to you on your preference there.
Okay.
Anybody else? Okay. The next item is the fiscal year 2021.
Excuse me.
Yeah.
Chairman Hooper, can you?
Yes, go ahead, Miss Dr. Kelly.
This is Dr. Kelly. Yes, I'm just sorry. I came in about 10 minutes late, but I was able to hear the whole presentation. So thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Thank you for your time.
Mr. Allen.
Mr. Chairman, hold on a second.
Mr. Allen.
I have a question. Last year when I think, Brett, I think it was you, appeared before the board, I had asked the Transportation Surtax Board, I had asked a question as to the engagement of disadvantaged business firms, and you had noted that your contract with the county had a 25% requirement. And I inquired at that point in time if there was a possibility that as you developed this year's audit plan for 2020, if that participation level could be increased to at least the goal of our Surtax board of 30%.
Well, that actually that's set with our contract with the county, so that's something that
I had asked about if there was a possibility of a voluntary commitment to increase that participation level to 30%. And still provide you with the ability to provide the overall opinion.
Now you're talking about with respect to the audit of the Surtax fund. I mean, I think we can
Yes,
probably have a
yes.
follow-up discussion with you about that.
Yes, just
to
for
work
the
on that.
Surtax.
Yeah.
Just for the Surtax fund.
Okay.
Since we are
Because
paying
last
more
year,
than
yeah. Okay.
the additional workload, we do supplement in our budget with the county to fund that additional work required for the audit of the Surtax funds. And since the goal of the Surtax program is to commit to an overall commitment of at least 30% to disadvantaged businesses, I had asked voluntarily if the firm could make that commitment as you design your work plan for 2020.
Okay. Yeah, again, we can definitely work that in and make sure that, again, with regard to the Surtax audit, that's not a problem.
Thank you.
Do you have something to say? Okay, any other board members? I concur with it too.
For the record, I concur with that request. This is Anthea.
Yeah, and how do we assure that that actually gets accomplished?
Mr. Chair, I will work with the County Auditor's Office and our Finance and Administrative Services Division, as well as Angela, to see how we can effectuate that.
Right, and if there's a CBE goal assigned to the contract, then there are monthly utilization reports that are required for purposes of reporting participation. So it would be reflected in the reports that are submitted to the Office of Economic and Small Business Development, but we'll check on that.
Thank you. Thanks. Okay, if there's no other questions on this item, the next one is the 2021 Surtax Performance Audit Plan. So we can move on to that one.
I'd like to just make sure that we have the representatives from the office, the County Auditor's Office, prepared to start the presentation.
Yes, this is Bob. I'll be glad to begin, and then Laura is here with me, and she'll finish up.
Thank you, Mr. Milton.
Well, thank you all very much for the opportunity to speak with you. I'm Bob Milton, County Auditor, and I just wanted to, first of all, thank you all for your service. I think it's very important for the citizens to have this independent oversight, and of course, being County Auditor, I am part of the independent oversight process for the county. I certainly appreciate that. I want to just take a minute before we begin, and just mainly for any public that may be watching or listening in, to differentiate the difference between the external commercial CPA firms' traditional audit and the types of audits that we do. The audits you've been talking about with a CPA firm are basically financial statement audits, and so their primary concern is to make sure the financial statements are presented properly and the high level compliance to ensure that. And I like to describe it as, their audit is at a very high level, let's say at the 30,000 foot level, and our audit's not at the 30,000 foot level. Our audit's down in the ditches. I mean, we get right down there in the trenches, and we look at what needs to be looked at from an operations standpoint, not the financial statement standpoint per se. So the types of audits that we do are just much, much different than the types that they do. And if you could go to, you're on the right slide there, Gretchen. I get the question a lot of how do you choose the areas to audit? Because as you can imagine, in the county, there's hundreds of possible areas that we could audit, but we do have limited resources. So how we do that, basically, we use several sources, but one is the risk assessment process. So we go through and assess the various risks of various entities that could be subject to audit throughout the county. And by risk, that means operations risk, risk to the citizens, to the health and safety of the citizens, financial impact. Many of the years since the last audit, many different factors go into the risk assessment process to select areas for audit. And then, of course, we tend to try to focus more on the high risk areas, but then also pick a few of the lower risk areas for audit, just simply because we want every facet of the county to be subject to audit. There would be some programs we would never audit if we only stuck to high risk areas. We also give priority to requests of the Board of County Commissioners if they have concerns about any area, county management, and I would certainly include you folks for any concerns that you have in any particular areas or projects involving the Surtax. We definitely will give that priority in our audit plan. And that, by using this risk assessment and planning process, it helps to make sure that our audit staff are used as efficiently and effectively as possible, and to ensure the critical areas are covered. We do publish an annual audit plan to inform everyone as to what the audits are that are planned for the upcoming year. We are preparing the formal plan now, and it will be on the agenda of the Board of County Commissioners sometime in October for filing and their acknowledgement. Not all audit shops publish the plan, but we want to be as transparent as we can within the law. So we do publish that annual plan. And Gretchen, if you could go to the next slide. We do, I want to emphasize also that, we're an audit shop, but we don't believe we can be most effective by only doing audits. So, which are largely after the fact as far as reviewing transactions, even though we review past transactions to formulate recommendations for the future for improvements in operations and controls and so forth. We also believe it's important to be proactive in contemporary issues. So we do issue memos throughout the year on various topics, and we call those advisories. And it may be on Surtax issues. We now have started reviewing RFPs before they are actually issued by the county's purchasing department to see if we have any concerns. And we started that service largely because we found ourselves requesting items being pulled from the Board of County Commissioners agenda after proposals had been received or late in the process. And so we wanted to proactively get ahead of all that and make sure it was really up to snuff before the RFP was ever issued. So we're doing quite a bit of those as well. Definitely includes Surtax. We've done several advisories relating to Surtax during the past year. We attend relevant meetings. Laura attends just about all of your meetings. Our audits, we do performance audits, financial audits, and compliance audits. We don't separate those out. We just, when we start an audit, we do also do a risk assessment for the individual audit. And in that risk assessment, we sit down and we brainstorm what could possibly go wrong, what could be done better, and then we identify those and we rank those according to risk. And just as Brett mentioned that they consider fraud in their audits, it's a primary focus of every audit that we do. And we also, we've identified fraud in several areas of the county in the past, and we do receive allegations from individuals, typically county employees, that believe there's some alleged wrongdoing or fraud occurring. We will investigate those, and we will issue reports on those. We will work with law enforcement. If we find fraud, it's our practice to turn it over to law enforcement. to work with them on that. One of the things that we do and have been doing since I've been county auditor, which has been a little over 3 years now, is that we conduct our audits in accordance with government auditing standards, which is commonly referred to as the Yellow Book, which just helps ensure the quality of the audit. And also, when it comes to our annual audit plan, we do present it at the board meeting, as I said, and we do include Surtax planned audits in that audit plan. I do want to emphasize with the audit plan that it's just what it says. It's a plan. It's not meant to be cast in concrete. Obviously, needs change during the year. We may not do some audits that are on the plan, and we typically will do some audits also that were not on the plan, but were initiated during the year for whatever reason. So it's meant to be a very flexible document. It's just basically a planning tool. And I think I've pretty much covered, you can go to the next slide, Gretchen. I think I've pretty much covered it. We do solicit areas of concern, so I certainly encourage you anytime throughout the year, if you're all concerned about something that comes to your attention, please let us know. If it needs a full audit, we'll consider that. If it's a specific situation involving more of a investigative type audit, we will certainly consider that also. Basically, we have one FTE that's devoted to Surtax, but that doesn't mean we will only limit our resources applied to Surtax, that one FTE. So, we're the county audit function for the entire county. So we will devote resources that we believe need to be devoted rather than limit it to one FTE. And with that, I will turn it over to Laura, who will talk more specifically about the Surtax audits. Laura?
Hi, everybody. Can you hear me?
Yes,
Loud and clear.
Oh, okay, great. All right, if we can move forward to the next slide. Yeah.
There'll be about 5-second delay when I do the slide transitions.
All right. Well, I'm looking at the slide for Surtax funded audit resources. And as Mr. Melton mentioned, we have one full-time position assigned, and that's mostly me. But we also have additional resources throughout the office. Mr. Melton himself, Kathy Ann Hewlett, who's our deputy county auditor, certainly administrative support that helps pull everything together, and audit manager, audit senior, and audit staff positions, just because we all chip in and play different roles. And so you'll have more than just one auditor really assigned to it, but you'll get the resources of our office. And as Mr. Melton mentioned, most of our services are direct audit services, but about 20% of the effort we're estimating will be on advisory and consulting type services. So most of that is my involvement, which is attendance at these Oversight Board meetings. You don't always see me, but I am here listening. Also reviewing Surtax items that come up on the Board of County Commissioners agenda items. I'm also available when contracts are being negotiated. If anybody has questions, I'm also a resource available to many county offices. Mr. Melton mentioned we've been reviewing the solicitations before they go out. And I think that's been a really good process, helping get a better document out on the street. And then, as applicable, we would be issuing advisory memorandums. One of those was the conflict of interest one that we discussed last meeting. And the next slide, looking at direct audit services, that'll probably be about 80% of the effort towards Surtax. And we have identified 3 primary reviews or audits that we're going to be looking at for this year. And that is the MPO, community shuttle, and transit purchasing. And so we're going to take a look now at each one of those. and looking at the audit of the MPO. This was requested by the Oversight Board at the last meeting. We were going to review anyway, but, glad we're all on the same page. And what we're going to be doing with this one is taking a look at financial aspects, which could be expenditures, invoices, costs. We also look at the performance aspect, which is the actual services delivered and the actual deliverables. Contract compliance and compliance with any other rules or regulations that may be in effect are always an element of our audits, as well as looking for opportunities for improvements wherever they may be. And as Mr. Melton mentioned, our recommendations really try to focus on improvements for the future. And to give you a brief update, we did issue our engagement memorandum, which I think you were copied on earlier this month. We've had some internal meetings, and we do plan on initiating our entrance conference with MPO staff probably in the next 2 weeks. The next review would be the audit of transit purchasing. And this will be a larger effort by our office where we're going to be looking at several purchasing elements specific to transit, which is certainly an area that has been receiving and will continue to receive a lot of surtax funds. So we'll be leveraging the efforts of the office. Certainly with that kind of review, we're looking for compliance with the purchasing code. We're making sure we have fair and open competitive procurements. And a purchasing card review will be part of that. And perhaps you're aware that we've recently this year had a very large P-card review out at the port that was a large fraud investigation. So we're always alert to those kinds of situations as we're doing our audit procedures. And of course, opportunities for improvement, which you'll see show up on every audit. And we have a little picture of the bus there. We already see we've got your logo on the buses. And then the last audit that we have planned for 2021 would be an audit of the community shuttle program. And we anticipate that we would probably do one of these reviews each year, focusing on different municipalities and cycling through, just to make sure that these operations are as they should be. And this way we do, as Mr. Melton mentioned, we take a look at all of them, not just the big ones, but some of the smaller ones too. And again, always looking at invoices and expenditures. But for this review, performance would also be an important aspect, looking at service delivery and safety. Contract compliance would be another big aspect of this, and our ever popular other opportunities for improvement. And that's what we have planned. Does anybody have any questions?
Any board members?
Mr. Chairman?
Mr. Allen?
Yes, thank you. Laura, I don't know if this question is for you or Mr. Melton, but in his part of the presentation, he mentioned that the auditor's office had issued advisory recommendations on surtax activities. I'm aware of the advisory recommendation as it related to MPO, but I wasn't aware of any others. Can you disclose what those additional recommendations were or concerns?
Bob, would you want me to answer, or?
Sure, go ahead, Laura.
The majority of those advisory memorandums right now are related to the RFP solicitations. There was probably at least 5 of those, and most of those recommendations were looking at making sure there were, we were identifying if there were any conflicts of interest, that evaluation criteria in the solicitations and scopes of service was all clear, making sure that the county's options remained as open as possible through the negotiation process for pricing, just to protect the county's interests through that process. I believe, yeah.
Is it appropriate that the board had been advised of those other recommendations?
I don't believe they were significant, and it was part of developing a solicitation when it wasn't anything that had been released yet that was of concern. It was a process improvement.
Yeah, if I could add to that, the RFP advisories that we issue, we typically issue those to the Director of Purchasing. And, our primary objective is to get the items corrected or clarified in the RFP before it goes out. As I recall, all of these items that we issued were materially corrected, which has typically been the case. Purchasing has typically been very good about implementing all of our recommendations there. If we ever had a situation where there were material issues and purchasing did not correct it before it went out, then we would certainly consider notifying the Board of County Commissioners and also you folks if it was a Surtax situation.
Thank you.
Okay, any other questions?
This is Allison. I have a question just in reference to process. So in terms of the audit that will be done by your office, the operational performance audit, so at what point does the Oversight Board receive the results of the audits that are done? Is it at the point of the finding and the recommendations and draft, or is it including management comments? I just wasn't sure at what point this board gets the product.
Sure, I'll be happy to answer that for you. And it might be good just to kind of highlight the audit process. We initiate audits with the engagement letter. We meet with management. We conduct our audit field work, typically on site. At least before the pandemic, it was on site. And then we prepare a draft report. Typically, the audit field work on the average audit will take from 2 months to 3 months. Normally, it's not quick or easy. That's because we're down in the trenches. It's an involved process. So typically, it would take 2 to 3 months. Maybe not as long. Maybe longer. We prepare a draft report. We discuss that draft report with management. We ask for written responses to the draft report recommendations, and then when we get those back, we incorporate and issue into the report and issue it. Now, under state law, everything that we do or find during the audit process is confidential. It's not just exempt from public disclosure, it's confidential in addition to that. And so we cannot release anything until I sign and issue that final report. It's at that point that the Board of County Commissioners first sees that report, and that's the same time you would receive that report also. It is the same, it's the very first time that the report is issued publicly. And I will say, because, sometimes people don't realize this, but once we give the report to management and discuss it with them, they have 30 days to respond to our recommendations. Now, if it's a very involved report, we may not get responses in 30 days, but we believe it's in everyone's best interest to have management's responses incorporated into the report. So as long as they're not being unreasonable, we will wait to incorporate their responses.
Mr. Chair, may I ask a question to Mr. Milton?
Go ahead.
Thank you. Mr. Milton, could you define who management would be in this particular situation if it was a Surtax-related project, and who you would envision would be part of the exit interview during a Surtax-related audit?
Sure. Management is the auditee. For example, with the MPO, the auditee is the MPO. So in that case, MPO management would be in the exit conference and receive the draft report. Now, there could be a situation, maybe we might have a finding, an issue relating to county management, even though they're auditing the MPO, we're auditing the MPO. In that case, we would take that one particular issue and present that issue to county management to respond to instead of the MPO. But it's a very small group. It's the auditee directly. Now, if it's a county department, it would be the county department staff and anyone up to Bertha.
Mr. Chair, may I have a follow-up question? So, Mr. Moulton, I was specifically thinking about the community shuttle program. Would it, are you all envisioning, because that is a municipal program, or is it the municipalities or is it Broward County Transit that manages the contract?
Well, you know, I guess it would be both. You know, as far as what we know right now, if we have recommendations addressed to the municipalities, it could be the municipalities. But more likely, as I think through it, more likely would be the transit. And then we might recommend that transit work with the municipalities to make these changes and so forth. So, you know, I guess we need to wait and see what the issues are that we come across.
Ms. Bennett?
So at what
Thank you,
point
Mr.
does
Chair.
this board get a chance, say if we needed clarity or time to understand or need something further looked at based on the product or the report that's provided, at what point does this board get an opportunity to provide that input? So it's only after the report is completely finalized is when this, and I guess what you're saying, that's when we get it. We don't have anything other than at that point is that this is the report, it sounds like.
That's a good question. We would be, you know, because of state law, that's the way it has to work, but we would certainly be glad if your board so desires to present the report to you. And once it's public, then we can answer any questions that you may have on that report or what we found and so forth. That once we issue the report, then everything's public and we can talk totally about it. In the meantime, you know, on these audits that we've identified to you or any other future audits, please feel free to communicate any specific concerns that you have either to Laura or to me, and we will do our best to make sure it's included in the scope of the audits.
Mr. Chair?
Yes, go ahead, Ms. Bennett.
This is Anthea. Mr. Melton, I'm curious to know how you're auditing for the 30%, both at the county, and do you have any interaction with respect to the municipalities in meeting that goal?
Laura, would you like to answer that one?
Sure. Well, I can tell you that as I'm reviewing the solicitations that are coming out for Surtax funded projects, one of the key things I am looking for is that there is the 30% requirement in each one of those. So that's one thing that we're doing proactively. Certainly in the future, once the municipalities begin the work that they're just in the process of being awarded, when we do those reviews, that would definitely be a key contract compliance area that we would look at. And that's most of the activity for right now. When we do the purchasing review for transit, again, if we're looking at any specific contracts there, I'm not really sure what the exact scope of that audit would be, but we can certainly keep that in mind and look for any opportunities to include CBE participation in our objectives, if appropriate.
Ms. Wallace.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So compliance with the County Business Enterprise Ordinance is handled by the Office of Economic and Small Business Development. Each contract that has a CBE goal has forms attached to it called monthly utilization reports, and each contractor is required to file a monthly utilization report with the Office of Economic and Small Business Development, Sandy Michael McDonald's office, and they track monthly CBE participation in all county contracts that have CBE goals.
Excuse me, if I could just follow up. I know Mr. Melton mentioned being proactive, and that is a piece that I'm interested in, because I think a lot of the decisions oftentimes get made, and then it's too late. So I'm really happy to hear that you're working with department heads ahead of time on some level and making sure that the components that are needed are in place. And then I'm hoping that that strategy will evolve to the municipalities. So something is in place, and we don't wait until then it's issued and it's too late. So that's really my concern.
But the purpose for an audit also is to indicate whether or not we performed, so that we do see if we missed. And if there's, I think there's a section here of opportunities for improvement, right?
So, yes, on the back end, you know, Sandy's office takes care of that. Thanks.
Does anybody else have questions? Okay, is that the whole presentation? Okay.
Yes, that's it. Thank you all very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Nichole, would you please come to the podium? So next up, Mr. Chair, Vice Chair, and Oversight Board members, we have an update based on the recommendations that you all sent, along with your Cycle 1 eligibility approved municipal and public works projects about the public engagement and outreach plan for the next 5 years. And Nichole's going to give you an overview of that. Nichole Kalil is the new Public Information Officer.
Hello, good to meet a couple of you in person. So with that said, all right. So here today to talk about the marketing, advertising, public relations, and media components of promoting the surtax in the community. Promoting it with business constituents, the general public.
Has the sound gone out?
Hello?
Can you hear Nichole?
Could we turn up the microphone for Nichole?
Okay.
It's kind of hard to hear through the phone.
Literally? Hello? Better?
That is better. Thank you.
Okay, I'll start over. I was simply explaining that I'm here today to go over the operations for the public engagement and outreach plan for the surtax, and to break down what that really means. We'll go over advertising, public relations, marketing, and media outreach, and how we're going to promote the works of the surtax to the general public, to government agencies, liaisons, the media, major businesses, etc., and anyone else I missed in the Tri-County area. Just to review the first slide very quickly, the launch of the 5-year engagement and outreach plan is comprehensive, multifaceted, and strategic. Objectives, actions, and timelines are clearly identified. You have a breakdown of the plan. It's about a 23-page plan. I think we've mentioned before that that's going to be a living document. It's pretty detailed, obviously far more detailed than the PowerPoint. The purpose of the plan is to educate the public. The plan considers factors such as project types, timelines, cost effectiveness, regional demographics, coordination with outreach and marketing efforts, as well as ongoing effects of COVID, pandemic, and incoming census report, which will be here about spring 21. Recognizing the dynamic nature of communication tools and importance of testing our impact, We plan to monitor and report regularly and focus investments on where it's most effective, and we'll go over that on the last slide where we talk about KPIs. Another component to understand how far our reach can go is that it is not just me doing this, thank God. We have a public information specialist onboarding, hopefully sooner than later. We have an outsourced marketing agency who will primarily help us with our branding and some digital components. And then we'll use in-house services with our Office of Public Communications. In order to know where we're going or what we're going to do, we want to know who we're speaking to and how they can best receive our message. Slide 51 is just a small sample of who we've identified as our targeted users in our general public, keeping in mind that many are already commuters, some are future commuters. Those who commute maybe want to commute more once they learn more about projects that bring their places of interest together. For instance, over the weekend, there may be projects coming that link their cities a little bit better, and it might not just be that they're a public transportation user from work and home. So with that said, we have the breakdown here: Tri-County commuters, users of multimode, existing transit, broke that down a little into paratransit, fixed route, rapid bus, community shuttles, working with the general public, vulnerable and hard to reach, students, tourists, and tourists are snowbirds. Not all tourists are snowbirds, though. So we'll say tourists and snowbirds, colleges and universities, and older adults. Yes.
So, I see Tri-County commuters. I don't know if that means people that are already traveling on transit. Is that what that is?
Transit and car.
Oh, and car.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because I think it's important that we also include, and this category might include that, but just to make a statement, I think it's important if we're going to reduce the congestion in traffic is to start converting people to use quality transportation, and perception and all those things start to come into play. And then we as a community are we all start using it. And I think that the whole idea of connecting the Tri-County, and I know we already do that, is part of that. Because some of us, some folks probably just don't know what's out there. And as it starts to come online and we start doing newer and more high-tech types of transportation, we're going to want to start converting people. I think they're called choice riders. So thank you.
No problem. Transparency.
Nichole, I have something.
Yes.
Go ahead, Ms. Kelly.
We talked about this. If you could add the population of disabled persons, because I happen to be a twofer. I'm older and disabled now, but I was disabled at 50. So if we could just target them as well as a specific population because of paratransit, that'd be great.
That is detailed in the full report. We noted that right after our call. And we'll be working with you on that once we start executing everything.
Great.
Thank you. Transparency and accessibility, just as important as it is to the Surtax and the Oversight Board in general, it is specifically important to our marketing and outreach efforts. With that said, we want to make sure our information is accessible, that it's frequently circulated, that it's accurate, that it's updated, and that we're responsive. Here are a few examples of how we intend to do that, with some of which are already well in place. Surtax meetings and presentations, a social media program. You may or may not follow us on Twitter. If not, I encourage you to do so. But expect the social media outreach for the Surtax to grow largely. Unfortunately, we're a little limited right now on how we get the word out, so we're really going to have to rely on our digital efforts. So we'll be growing our accounts, Facebook, Instagram, and we'll be piggybacking on the county's YouTube channel. Information kiosk, indoor and outdoor. Just picture kind of a pedestal with an iPad stand on top of it. Those are the indoor kiosks. I believe primarily and first they'll be available at the GC West building. As we grow information that can be available there and work with budget and so forth, they'll be available in more county places like the airport. The outdoor kiosks are, at this time, we're expecting them to look kind of like an art piece or something just very steady that is durable and can be placed outdoor with a QR code where passerbys can simply scan the QR code and receive Surtax information on their phone. Public engagement space at GC West. We'll be relocating the Surtax team to the West office, which is a little more conducive and friendly to the public. We'll be partnering and leveraging planned marketing outreach with OESBD, Innovation, and BC Transit.
Who is OESBD?
The Office of Economic and Small Business Development.
Okay, well, I'm just asking.
Yes, we have to stop using acronyms. Sorry, that's.
I'm glad you took that.
Just
Yes.
add to the partnering and leveraging planned marketing
Yes.
and outreach strategy, I think it's really critical to have community partners, because that's the only way you're going to be able to connect with some of the underserved populations, the older folks. They belong to different organizations, and you need to leverage those partners. As part
Agree.
of the outreach strategy.
We detailed that in the engagement plan. We call them gatekeepers. So for a good example of that would be at a university. If we want to reach the student population, we would first talk with the Student Government Association and see what resources we have for communicating with them.
Yes.
So this is where we are now. Obviously, I'm on board, hired, still learning my way around. I think I'm 6 weeks in now. Feels a little longer. But so we have good news. Tuesday, we had the marketing contract approved, so we can get to work with them. And we've discussed the priority is designing a logo, the branding process. So the engagement and outreach plan is the operations of how we're going to get the word out and the various vehicles and methods we're going to use. But what does that look like? This is where the branding comes in, and we'll be outsourcing that with our marketing agency. The Oversight Board should provide input as well as other groups of stakeholders. If you look at this colorful snake looking thing, the part where you all would come in is on the brainstorming, the pink, and the green for the revisions. So the long and short of the process is something is designed with primary input, what the program is, what we intend, how we intend to message, and how we want people to perceive the program, meaning the Surtax. Something is sketched up by an artist, it's presented. We're going to provide our input or edits, so to speak, which are the revisions. Sometimes this process happens 3 times, sometimes you get lucky on the first shot. This process can go as slowly or as quickly as we all provide our input and okays or changes.
So I have a question. So on the, we signed a contract. Who do we sign a contract with?
On September 22nd, we signed a contract with Adept for 3 types of services. They were very specific. One is branding and logo, one is social media services, and then there's an optional service for videography if we should need it.
Okay, and then you said it would take as slow and as long as we want. I know, as fast or as slow as we make it go.
As we reply, yes.
Right, and so there's a point in time when brainstorming comes in, and we're involved in brainstorming, and we're also involved in revisions. And this board meets once a month, but not 12 months out of the year.
Right.
So the timing on that is, we're going to get one shot at it, okay? Unless we want this to
Let's
take
make it a
2
good one.
years. Yeah, and so, and I know that it's very important to my other colleagues on this board and to our entire staff that we get this advancing. So, yeah, we got to make it, we got to time it well.
We'll
and
make it good.
Get a lot of, and maybe that can come with some follow-up, just individual follow-up and stuff like that, right?
Well, Mr. Chair, I know I heard you talking at the subcommittee meeting about the possibility for a workshop. So because we're not going to be meeting in November and December, perhaps we could have a 2-day meeting, much like we did in August, in January, one which is a workshop and one which has more action items.
This board member would be amenable to that, and I think it's important that we kick it off and that we do brainstorm and that it's meaningful, and not, one more item on the agenda. I agree with that if we can make it work, hopefully.
That'd be great.
Mr. Chairman, this is Ron Fraser.
Yes, Mr. Frazier.
I understand that small business applies to this contract, and in my briefing they told me that there were several small businesses that have been engaged. Could we be provided the names of those small businesses?
Mr. Frazier, this is Gretchen. For the ADEPT contract, it is, to my knowledge, it is just ADEPT. I'm looking at Angela for, they are, I believe, a CBE. They are a certified business enterprise. And then I think what you're referencing, just so that the rest of the board members are aware, there is another qualified vendors list that is being developed through the Office of Public Communications with a wide array of communications and marketing types of services as well, that we could purchase off of different types of services than the one that we just entered into with ADEPT. I believe there are 7 or 8 firms that have responded. As soon as that gets in front of the county commission and is approved, I'll make sure I share that information with the board.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, Doug Coleman here.
Yes, sir.
I have a question. I know we just hired the PR firm. We have to wait October, November, December, January before we see something from them. Why can't we ask them to can they make a presentation as early as the end of October regarding branding or not? I don't like the idea of waiting until October. I mean, from now,
it's a process.
January to see something. Huh?
It's a process, and I think that we're going to be doing a workshop in November where we can help brainstorm and give them our thoughts and ideas of what we think the program should.
Okay, so the workshop's November. It's not January.
So I'm going to take your direction. Obviously, I think I was suggesting that maybe we could do the brainstorming at our October meeting, and then we could do the revisions. They could have time to do the presentation, to come up with various designs, and then we can bring it back to you in a workshop in January.
That's fine. That's okay.
So as you can see, there's a stint of time between there. So right now, the intention is to implement what we call segue branding. So we can't just not get a message out because we don't have a logo yet. Because the penny for transportation logo has already been identified and recognized by the community, we will still use components of that as we move forward with getting the word out.
Mr. Chair, can I make a comment also? This is Mr. Smith. So first, I want to echo your comments. We're behind the 8 ball here, and we don't have time to fumble and pick up the ball. So we need a well-orchestrated plan to roll this out because we're behind to begin with. And a couple of facets on that. One, we are using some external teams, which I think is great, but I want to be clear about who has accountability to really bring this together and synthesize it in a strong fashion. Even if that's us providing some of the inputs, I want to know exactly, what the plan is and who's doing what and what the deliverables are so that we can just track this, because sometimes it gets confusing because a lot of people are going to be working on it we're talking about a brand and the logo, and we're intermixing the terms a little bit. I think it's just very important how all of this looks and feels and is put out, and every piece of it is important. So I just want to be careful. I'm glad we're going to do the workshop, and I agree with Mr. Coleman's comments that timeliness is imperative as well. I think now that we do have someone engaged, I think they should start working on some sort of, just even if they have creative ideas, to start on the logo / branding, process. Like, let's get going.
Yeah, and I would urge the board members to, between now and October, to think through what some of your thoughts are, put them down on a list, and so we can have a productive meeting and not start from square one on that particular day. Because I think it's important when we come to the table as board members, we also have to produce in order for them to understand what it is we're looking for. So,
It could be as simple as referencing some of your favorite logos,
right,
and bringing those up.
Okay, any more questions? All right, we'll keep going. Thank you.
Okay, so our last and probably most important slide is on performance and our evaluation. Luckily, nowadays, marketing, advertising, public relation, all the outreach we're going to be executing is measurable in both a qualitative and quantitative regard. With that said, most of the mechanisms we're using almost automatically generate reporting and tracking. Therefore, I intend to, and to address the other gentleman's question, as the leader of this force, I intend to pull together our efforts on a quarterly basis and provide you reports on our progress. And again, those will be both qualitative and quantitative, some of it which we already have going with our web analytics and our Twitter, where we have tracking there. That'll be used as our baseline. I suggest that the first report I'll compile for you, and you come back to me and tell me whether it was too much, too little information, or there might be something you're looking for that we didn't think of proposing reporting on. Are there any questions about reporting or suggestions on reporting at this time? No? So the most important part of being able to report is assuring that we're putting in a good return on our investment, both on my part, the information specialist, the marketing agency, OPC's time. We want to make sure that we're reaching the community in whole, in the breakdowns that we mentioned in the report, where we niched out the various target audiences. The other importance of keeping up with these reports is knowing where there's opportunities to pivot, to refocus resources, and hear from the community. An important component of the reporting is receiving surveys, where we'll hear outright on how we're doing. And again, we may be doing well, there may be more we're doing, but we won't know if we don't ask. That's it. Any questions?
Do we have any questions? Now, we're looking forward to the upcoming meetings and participating. I know the board, it's very important to us. So thank you very much for your time and your effort. Okay. Next. So the next, we have action items. We need to approve the minutes from August 14th. Do we have a motion? Go ahead.
Excuse me, I don't know if Laura Rogers is still on the line, but she did.
Yes, I am.
Okay, Laura, you contacted us to let us know that you had not been listed as present, virtually present, at the August 13th and August 14th board meetings, the workshop and the board meeting, and that you would like the minutes to reflect that. So we wanted to make sure that we put that on the record here at the meeting.
Okay.
Great, thank you so much.
Okay. All right, so do we have a motion with the amended amendment to add Laura's presence in those two meetings? Can we have a motion to approve the minutes
I'd like to make
So
a
moved, Mrs.
motion.
Belt.
You want a second?
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? Okay, all those in favor, say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any nays? Okay, minutes are approved. So are we also doing Oversight Board meeting? This other thing? Meeting to approve proposed projects and proposed expenditures in the first 5-year plan? It's on my agenda list. Okay, so that was it? That was the action item?
That was it.
Okay. Okay, I hope this list is correct then. My next item is Board Coordinator Performance Appraisal. We're going to talk about that. And we had a meeting this afternoon from 1 to about 2:15. I just want to kind of let everybody know, and please Phil or Doug or Mr. Frazier, tell me if you want to add any thoughts. What we're going to do is have a meeting, a workshop to discuss our priorities and things for our executive director to focus in on so that we can measure performance and that it can also help us in navigating our goals and objectives for the year. And because it was difficult for us to get our arms around a performance rating that we didn't really feel fit the objectives and goals that we're working on this year and potentially into the future. So I forget, when are we gonna do this?
We were considering the October meeting, which is, I guess we'll discuss the scheduling and availability when we get to that point. But we're thinking, we're going to contact the county's Office of Learning and Organizational Development to find out when a facilitator would be available to conduct a workshop to kind of facilitate the discussion regarding goals, objectives, and priorities of the Oversight Board prospectively so that we can develop a document
Right.
that outlines all of those items.
And, you know, Phil brought it up and the other committee members agreed that it is important that all the board members participate in this program because, you know, we all want to be heard on what the goals should be. So for the committee to do it was a little bit, it was going to be a little arduous for us. So, and we think it's going to take time and some thoughtfulness, and that's why we wanted to do it, not in a committee meeting over an hour of time, but more like a workshop with some help from the staff. So that's the report. Do any of my committee members want to add anything to that?
I was just curious to know who was on the original committee?
So the ones that called in were Doug Kuhlman, Mr. Frazier, Mr. Allen, myself. I think you were on it too, but no?
No, I was told not.
But if you would like to be, I mean, well, now it's going to be the entire board,
Right.
but that's who was on the phone today,
Okay.
okay? So that's our report. Is there any of the other committee members want to speak on that item? Okay. The next one is, if this is correct, final input and content at Oversight Board's inaugural Surtax report? Okay, great.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. You've all received 2 Word documents from me in the last week. One was the engagement and outreach plan that Nichole just spoke to, and the other was the Surtax inaugural report, which we first brought to you for your input back in January and had hoped that we would be able to have published, but of course COVID-19 made that very difficult. So we have the report. It now covers the time period of January 1st, 2019, when we first started collecting the sales surtax, all the way through the end of our fiscal year, so going through September 30th of 2020. And we've tried to boil it down as much as we can, but this is your report. As I mentioned to each of you in your briefings, This is one of the responsibilities that you have under the ordinance that we operationalize for you, but we feel very strongly that you need to feel comfortable that it is telling the story that you want it to tell. It's part of the public engagement and outreach. It's one of the factors that I would assume that you'll be holding me responsible for. It's one of my duties to you to help pull all of that together. All of the agencies that have received any surtax funding, both internal and external to the county, including the MPO under their contract, have all provided input. And our financial and budget folks have also provided input, and just very important that we get your feedback. This is an opportunity for you to put things on the record, but we also want to give you an opportunity to submit to us any of your requested changes or comments in writing for both the engagement plan and the inaugural report by September 30th. So that's all. I can give you a little more time if you need it.
It's long.
To summarize, you're asking us for our input on the inaugural audit.
The inaugural report.
The inaugural report.
It's a report of
It's our
everything that
history.
you've done, of everything that's happened since the surtax was initiated. And then also the public engagement plan. And if you don't mind, Mr. Chair, Mr. Smith, I just wanted to alert you to the fact that at the very end of the public engagement plan document, there is a staffing and responsibilities section. So I'd really like to make sure that you're comfortable with who is doing what and who is responsible for doing what in the public engagement plan.
So it's this one that I just opened, it's called I want to make sure I get my homework. I just want to make sure I get my homework correct here. So it's the Mobility Advancement Program Independent Surtax Oversight Board Inaugural Report covering January 1st, 2019 to September 30th, 2020.
It's about 44 pages long.
Yes, lots of
Okay.
pictures though.
Okay, so we're going to give you our input, and if we want to add anything, okay. Yeah.
And the due date for this homework is September 30, is that right?
That's right. But the teacher said that if we're late, we can be a few days late.
My dog ate my homework.
Okay, I got it now. All right.
What we'd love
Mr.
is to be
Chairman?
able to bring you back a proof, a really, like a final version that's been professionally laid out with all of your pictures and the statements that some of you have made. When we meet again in October, it'd be great to hand you the report so that you can start disseminating it out in the community, because you are one of our most important emissaries.
Okay, yes, Mr. Allen.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. As you could tell from perhaps my conversation when we were talking about the audit, I am, one of our major tasks as a oversight board is transparency. And, I would like to see incorporated into the annual report references back to the fact that we have conducted, or the auditor, the external auditor, has provided oversight and financial statements that, with the timing that we're talking about, is pretty difficult to incorporate into the performance report. And I don't know how to integrate both the specific tasks and projects that we have approved during the almost 2 years, and the financial results in the audit. I don't know if it's just a matter of providing some reference back within the annual report to the existence of audited financial statements, or how that might factor into the presentation. That's it.
Mr. Allen, we will make that change, and we'll update the inaugural report to reflect that audited financial statements have been provided, and perhaps we could even add a link What we've done is we've placed the audits and the management letter on the Penny for Transportation website. There's a new tab that's called Transparency and Accountability, where you find all the financial statement information. So perhaps we could mention it in the report and send people there for more information. And that way, anytime that we get something from the external auditors or from our own county auditors, we can post it there.
I just want to make sure also that, you know, that the information that we produce and provide as part of the annual report to the board, that those tie back into the audited financials.
Okay, thank you. What else do we have?
So the last item on our agenda, unless we do have board member reports, and I believe that one of the board members mentioned that they do have a report, is to talk about our next meeting date and the location. And I think Angela may jump in, but there is some level of uncertainty regarding whether or not we will be able to be virtually participating and still maintain a quorum. Because of COVID, we are able to have these types of virtual meetings and have public participation occur virtually. If the order does not get extended, it ends on September 30th. If it's not extended, then we would need to have a physical quorum present, and that's 5 members, and then the rest of the Oversight Board could participate virtually. If our buildings are opened back up to the public, as we do expect that they will be relatively soon, then we could go back to meeting at the Traffic Engineering Division. What I would like to suggest is that the Oversight Board provides us with an alternative day, because now that we are hearing that we'd like to have a branding presentation, if that's not quite ready on October 22nd, if the Oversight Board members could look at their calendars and see if October 29th might be an alternate day that, and we would need a longer period of time than just 2.5 hours. We'd probably need to go back to our kind of 5-hour meeting from 9:30 to 2, providing lunch. But I just wanted to have that conversation, try to get some consensus, and it looks like Angela would like to weigh in too.
Right, and the other issue is that this room is not available on the 22nd. So our normal meeting date is the 4th Thursday of the month, and that would be October 22nd. But October 22nd, this room is not available. So we would have to utilize a different location in the event that the governor's executive order is not continued to allowing virtual meetings. Then we can find out whether the traffic engineering building is available. If the order is continued and we need to continue having virtual meetings, and if the building is still closed to the public, then we need to pick a different date so that we can utilize the conference abilities that are limited to this room. So the recording and the telephone calls and so forth, that system that's limited to this particular room, and we cannot use it on the 22nd. So those are the issues.
So this is the only place where we can have a remote meeting?
So it's the telephone, the public participation and the system that allows the public to utilize this phone system, however that works. I can't explain it, but, right. And so
I think we could also use 430, but room 430, which is down the hall, I think it also has some capabilities. I mean, they use it for SCs, so I do think it's possible. But if we could just get an alternative date that everyone's comfortable with, it'll give us a little bit more flexibility.
I mean, I'm okay with the 29th. I'd ask the rest of the board members what their availability is. It would be like a 9 to 2, right? It's a Thursday on the 29th.
It's okay for me. 29th.
Would you say?
29th is okay with me also, but what's the intent to be accomplished on the 29th? I mean, Is that the workshop?
Yeah, go ahead.
So I have a series of items that I'd like to get some consensus about. We've been talking about having some presentations, and I hope that I haven't missed anything. We have invited the Florida Department of Transportation District 4 to make a presentation that day, the Broward MPO to make a presentation that day, our Broward County Transit Rail Division to make a presentation. There may be a co-presentation related to commuter rail on the FEC that's available that day. I've been asked by a couple of members of the Oversight Board to get an update on the construction progress. There was a rather large amount of money that was put into the fiscal year 2020 budget, $1.9 million, for a variety of different types of relocations in order to accommodate the space at GC West, the public engagement space, and the Oversight Board meeting space. So the architects and the project managers are prepared to have a broader discussion than the one that we just had in August with you. You wanted to have a brief workshop on the performance appraisal process. That would probably be at least an hour. There will be a demonstration, a soft launch demonstration of the public dashboard. So that's the dashboard that you all created, but it's user-friendly for the public, and it's specific only to the 323 projects that have been approved so far. So it's a lot on that agenda, and there's also the possibility, I don't think it's very likely, but there's a possibility that we'll need to take action on several municipal projects. I don't know if we'll get them into status to take action on them by that point, but we do want to try to bring them all back to you at the same time. And Angela, is there anything I missed?
So are we planning, so the current agenda reflects that the legislative plan was deferred. So it's a possibility that we might talk about have a presentation regarding the proposed federal legislative program in October.
So I don't think we're going to be doing the workshop that particular day. We did mention that we were going to do brainstorming that day too on marketing. But as far as the performance, whatever we want to call it, measures or whatever, we'll be doing that in November. So that's a lot.
So right now, we don't have a November meeting scheduled because the fourth Thursday.
This was going to be more like a workshop.
So we will
We'll
also.
be more flexible. We'll have to figure
Absolutely.
it out.
So we also need to identify a date for November and then also for January.
Okay. And I have a request that we do it in another room and not this room anymore. It's too cold.
We don't disagree.
I don't know. So do we need to make that date now, the November date? Is that?
I would suggest that we go ahead because of the holidays, try
Okay.
to get these things on people's calendars.
So how's everybody on October 29th?
I'm good.
I'm good.
Is there anyone that's not good?
I'm good.
Okay. And were you asking for us to have this 5 people in person or something like that?
We will have to let you know what happens. I think what we wanted to say on the record so everyone understood is that right now what we're doing may or may not be possible,
Gotcha.
depending on what the governor's orders are with respect to these types of meetings.
Okay.
So what about the 19th?
Of November?
Hold on, let me look at this. Oh, yikes. The 19th of November, but it would need to be in the afternoon because we have a big event that day that you all are going to be coming to, we hope. So, but you could hold it. Is the 19th terrible for you, Chair?
Looks like I have I don't know why it doubled up there. I've got some sort of DDA meeting at 10:30, but if it's in the afternoon, depends. What is that? Yeah, I have a workshop on the 19th at 10:30. It usually goes for about an hour and a half till noon.
Would it be better if we could do an afternoon that day?
It would for me, but.
Okay. What about for the rest of the board members? Would the afternoon of the 19th be possible?
Yes.
Yes?
Coleman, no problem.
So long as you let Coolman get up at 9:30, he's no problem.
I'm fine, Fraser.
Thank you, Mr.
Okay,
Fraser.
so set it up. That'll be great.
All right, so we'll do the workshop in November, on November 19th in the afternoon. I'll schedule it, I'll hold it for everyone when we finish up here.
Okay.
And then do you want to do the January? You want to try to get the January
try.
dates, or do you want to wait?
I think we can wait.
Okay, all right.
Okay.
Why wouldn't we try the fourth Thursday to be consistent? We should already have that on our calendar, and if there's a problem, then we have to change it.
Unfortunately, this is where I have to say, I've been selected to participate in Leadership Florida Cornerstone class, and that is my very first in-person. It's mandatory that I travel. I won't be here from the 27th through the 29th. Sorry.
All right, so I have to
Gretchen's
do
gonna
fourth.
have fun on that weekend. Those are a blast. Yeah. Okay, so, well, does it have to be on a Thursday?
We've tried to be consistent, but these are your rules, so you can, I was looking at the 21st of January. It's almost the fourth Thursday, we're off just by one day. If that's possible for everyone, we can try to hold it.
You mean January, not February?
I'm sorry, January.
Those Thursdays are, I just have that DDA meeting at 10:30.
Okay.
So if it were in the afternoon, the 21st would work for me.
Works for me.
Afternoon?
If it was.
Okay.
Are you okay?
Yeah, I can do it.
Okay.
Okay.
Cool. So then the next item is the members report, correct? Are we all done with locations and
Thank
time?
you.
Who are our members that?
Mr. Chair, Doug Coleman?
Okay, go ahead, Doug.
I have a comment, maybe a request, maybe a motion, I don't know. But, first is a question for Gretchen. I understand the county is having an amendment put on the ballot, is that correct, regarding, I'm not sure what it exactly says, but it has to do with the county having better jurisdiction over the cities so that we can make sure we have a comprehensive transportation plan moving forward. Is that correct?
It's Amendment 2, and yes, it was placed on the ballot, but I'm going to toss this over to Ms. Wallace.
Yes, the subject matter of the amendment of the ballot measure involves amending the county charter. It requests that the voters vote on whether they would like to have the county charter amended to allow the county to draft an ordinance regarding the development of transportation facilities, regional transportation facilities that are funded in whole or in part by Surtax, and have the ordinance, through ordinance, have the ability to override municipal ordinances that would prohibit such the development of such regional transportation facilities on county properties, such that the county could proceed from a regional perspective in developing things like park and rides, rail and bus facilities, both stations and terminals, and maintenance facilities on county property using surtax funds, such that they wouldn't be blocked by municipal action.
Okay, well, when I heard that, I know that our charge is to make sure surtax dollars are spent properly, correctly, and we get the most for the taxpayers get the most for their money. So, therefore, I thought that something like this should be extremely supported by the Surtax Board. I don't know if we legally can support it or not, or even endorse endorse this amendment to. So that's my question, I guess, for Angela. That's also my question for the board. Based on what I understand this amendment to do, I think it's extremely important to how effective we are as
And
getting
now
the
is
regional
not time to
transportation.
let our guard down. Please continue to wear facial coverings, practice social distancing, and wash your hands frequently. And remember to practice the 3 C's. Avoid closed.
Could I?
What happened there?
It's okay, go ahead.
Well, mine was a question for Angela, but I also would like to hear a response from the board, if they are even in agreement with me that this is something that...
I think this is absolutely critical. I mean, this is Shay from my perspective, because we cannot let politics kind of slow down the process. If the funds are sitting there and taxpayers have paid them in, and we're not able to utilize them, then that's an issue. And I don't know if we can officially weigh in on it, but we need this to keep moving forward. So if each city comes back and challenges something, then we're not going to make progress, on smaller things. So I think we need something like that.
I have a question. So, if I understand this correctly, if the zoning is counter to what the county wants to do, the city zoning, then the county would prevail. Is that correct?
That's correct. If this ballot measure passed, if the voters vote in favor of amending the charter to allow the county to enact an ordinance for this purpose, and it's specific to regional transportation facilities on county-owned property that are funded in whole or in part by Surtax. So it's very
I know, but it's not specific as to the locations of the properties. And I have a problem. I don't know what properties we're talking about. And cities have ideas of what their cities should look like and the zoning of their cities. And if the county and the cities want to discuss this and battle this, I'm not sure I want to take that position, because in my city, there might be a piece of property that should become a something I just don't know.
This is on county-owned properties only.
Okay.
And there are exemptions with respect to any area that's zoned residential. And it would have to be, there's already a process, I believe, that's outlined where the city and the county would have to work through a series of collaborative efforts to try to get to a place of agreement.
Do we have targeted properties for this? I mean, is there any way we could see a map or something like that? I'm just asking.
No.
I mean, you all of a sudden, you just go across the board and you just blow up city zoning on 5,000 properties. I get that. I don't know. That's why I'm asking the question.
Here. I believe this amendment is fairly restrictive. First of all, it's county-owned land, okay? Now, I'm the greatest advocate for the rights of these cities, but in this case, I think the overriding importance of a regional transportation system has to take precedent over 31 cities and what they would like or not like.
I'm okay with you making a motion in a second. I just don't know if I'm going to support it as an individual member.
I want to know whether we can. I think we should, but I don't know from a legal standpoint, Angela, or is this something we can do to show our support for if it passes?
And I'd like to hear everyone's thoughts as well. I mean, I'm just voicing what I know about it and what I think, and that's based on it being pretty narrow, Alan. I mean, if they were to come in and just start changing zoning all over the place, I don't think that's the intent, but I understand your concern. So I think we should all hear, how Angela interprets that, and I want to hear what the other board members think about it as well.
Okay. The Oversight Board can make recommendations and can take positions, as it has before, on matters impacting Surtax, and you can either do it as a board here. I mean, it would just be in the way of a communication of support for the matter to the county commission in the event that the Oversight Board supports it. Individually, you can either speak on behalf of the item or provide information to members of the public as you would on any other surtax matter if there's an inquiry. So you don't have to take official action. There's no prohibition against the board having a discussion and deciding whether it wants to support and issue a communication in support of the ballot measure to the county.
Ms. Bennett?
Mr. Chair, thanks. I guess my concern is the possibility of rezoning happening at the liberty of these municipalities. Whenever they choose to change whatever, or the county decides to change these locations. If it's a project that we've already approved and they change it, how does that impact the monies that we've already expended? So I think that now we need to be asking that question, where are these projects being done? Because then if rezoning happens, it could impact these projects.
All I would ask is that before we just make a decision that affects properties and the way they're zoned and potential, and again, I don't know. So maybe at the next meeting or at one meeting in the near future, we could have someone explain to us what the properties are, and maybe the cities have a side to it that they could, if there's any cities that are objecting to this amendment, that they could come and tell us why.
But there's also the possibility of future objections. How do we safeguard against that?
And so it's a 30-year surtax,
You know?
and in order to plan and develop, there are instances where projects have been funded, the design completely funded, and at least for one park and ride facility recently, the design was completely paid for. It was at 100% design, ready for construction, and the construction was funded through FDOT for a park and ride, and the municipalities blocked it. We don't want to be in this.
Did they block it, or was the zoning incompatible?
No, so it wasn't, that example wasn't a zoning issue. It was in the Transportation Improvement Plan through the MPO, and they get to have input regarding the Transportation Improvement Plan, and that particular property was not inside the city limits. It was outside the city limits on state property.
I hear you, but we're talking about zoning changes. Okay.
So, well, we're talking about having an ordinance that would override a municipality's attempt to block a regional transportation facility. That's what we're talking about. That's planned with surtax funding on county-owned property. That is the issue.
I think we have to look at the language of a lot of this and look at the properties, because if we start approving these constructions to be done, these whatever projects they are, and we start approving it, and maybe not now, but 10 years from now, if somebody goes ahead and decides they don't want it anymore and can destroy it. I think however we have our contract set up, once dollars have been expended, they can't go back.
Yeah, and I agree. I don't think a city should block something just because they don't like the idea of buses coming through or something like that. And I know one of the circumstances, I know the background behind that, but at the end of the day, you never know what you're doing by just blanketing over something like this. And if a city has zoning and there's certain properties, and maybe it was zoned for not residential, but a school, or I don't know what, or park, and all of a sudden you've just taken a park property and you've turned it, because the county owns it, and they've turned it into a maintenance facility for buses.
No, so a park, we can't do that. So there's a charter restriction. No, there's a restriction in the county charter that was approved by voters.
Before I vote on something like this, I'd like to know all the information before we just flippantly vote on something where I don't understand the whole thing. That's my problem. And I'm in real estate, and if I had properties, I wouldn't want the county or the city or anybody else coming in saying, oh, we're just going to spot zone change you. And I don't want the city doing that to the county.
Right.
I get that. So I just want to understand it better before I vote on it.
I agree with you, Alan. I think we really need to take a closer look at this.
It's probably good. I just want to understand it.
And not.
Yeah, I think I agree too, Alan.
Yeah.
After hearing you explain it that way, it doesn't hurt to hear it. But this is a long program, so it's not a rush by one meeting or the next.
Well, it's not, wait a minute, guys.
It's gonna be voted on.
I agree that we need to know a little bit more about it, but this thing is not been out there that long, and it's gonna come on the ballot pretty quick. So I would at least request
On October.
that, Gretchen, we get all the information about the wording of this and the background out to the board members, because I think in some cases we have to be leaders of the transportation system in this county, and it might be, and it's things like this that take precedent, in my opinion, when you got something so narrow. And the objections that I'm hearing aren't even valid.
I agree with you, Mr. Coleman. I think this is something of some urgency. I think we need to look at this right away, because what we don't want is for it to pass, to be voted on in a way that we have not done our due diligence. I mean, part of our responsibility is to be good stewards of the dollars, right? And so you already expend dollars for a project, and then somebody comes back and said, we don't want to move forward with the project. That's not a good use of tax dollars. So I think we need to know about this right away. November is around the corner.
And so the resolution approving the ballot language was approved by the county commission in August, and we can provide the actual resolution in the ballot language to the members of the Oversight Board, if you'd like to have that. But we don't have a list of projects out 30 years. So the issue is, and the immediate project, so we need to develop. So we're having a rail study done that's been funded, and the solicitation is ongoing for rail, and a system-wide study for bus rapid transit, and there's several other projects, and the results of those studies will not be completed yet. But when the results of those studies are completed and we have recommendations regarding siting facilities, where they will be sited, then we'll have more information, but we don't have that right now. So if you're looking for something right now tangible to say that this is where a regional rail or a station or maintenance facility or a regional bus maintenance facility will go, we need a third one. We need to develop one. We don't have that yet, and it will come out of the studies that are being developed. The purpose of this is not to get too far down the road with the planning of these types of projects going forward, and not have the ability and waste the time and the effort through these studies of, having these recommendations formed and not being able to follow through. So we don't have
Mr.
that
Chairman?
right now.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
this Phil, pulling the material and getting the material to us from the agenda item, the ballot language, can you also provide minutes of the meetings or discussions or workshops that affect this issue?
Mr. Chair, I think to your point, having a map that probably identifies some of the location of these properties. So as we move forward and we're voting on some of these projects, we have a clue about where these properties exist and what the potentiality might be for the project to move forward. And then on the back end, someone is saying they're not going to follow through. And I also think the exercise of understanding what's happening now will give us a basis from which to develop some strategies so we can protect these projects moving forward.
But this is going on the ballot. It's on the ballot, basically.
The November general election ballot, yes.
So what we're doing is we're throwing support at something that's already been decided that it will be on the ballot. And it's really just, hey, can you please put your phone on mute if you're not speaking? Somebody's got a clicking sound. So you're basically asking, Doug is asking the board to take a position and to show support for something, right? For the ballot language, right? Basically.
That's correct, and I think the best you're going to do right now is the staff could provide you with the 2 or 3 instances so you would know where the site was.
I get it, Doug. I get it, but
that's the best we're going to do. We don't know where these sites are going to be. We have a responsibility to a regional transportation system, and it's probably the only way we're going to get the best system for the best dollar, because we have 31 other municipalities we have to lean to. It doesn't give the county carte blanche to just go in there and do anything they want. They have to do their best effort too. So the language would be helpful, and maybe a short show and tell of the 2. I think there have been 2 or 3 projects that fell under this that caused this amendment to be necessary.
And it's on the ballot.
Mr. Chairman, if I may.
Yes, go ahead, Ms. Kelly.
Yes, well, it's pretty clear to me that we're talking about 30 years out, and the really frightening thing to me, as somebody who's been working nonstop for hopefully our next supervisor of elections since May, is that we're talking about something that's on the ballot that, you know, we're on the Transportation Surtax Oversight Board, and we don't, you know, we need to understand it. There's no way I can take a position on something as part of a board. You know, I need to understand it just in order to vote on it. So what's alarming to me is realizing, look at all the research we're going to be doing, and the average voter out there maybe isn't going to have the benefit of that. So I definitely want to see the language and the minutes of the meeting as Phil suggested. I think that's a great idea.
So this board does not have to take action. So this was an issue that Mr. Kuhlman felt was important for the board to discuss, and you can engage in a discussion regarding the matter, and you don't have to take action. You can just express your
Right, support or non-support. And as leaders in the community, as soon as you learn about it and you understand what it is, go out and tell people to vote for the amendment if that's what you want. I mean, honestly, I don't know enough about it, and it might be something that I want to get behind, but the next meeting's not until October or something. People are already going to have made their decision. That's so late in the game. Right, so, but I'm not going to vote on it
I just think
today.
it's an opportunity for us to understand it, so in the future, we know how to act.
Right.
We will be happy to get you as much educational information and the background as possible. And if you would like more information, we can, you know, give you resources where you can find more information as well.
Thank you. Do we have anything else of members' reports?
No, Al, that concludes. I want to bring it up for discussion and start moving. If it doesn't, we may or may not support it this year, and if it doesn't pass and some disasters happen, which I predict will, it'll probably come back. Thank you.
Holy mackerel, man.
No more disasters. We've had enough
we're
this year.
full of disasters. Don't start jinxing us. Okay. All right, so we don't have any more business, correct? Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and adjourn the meeting. We don't have to make a motion to adjourn, do we? Can we get a motion to adjourn?
I so move.
Okay, thank you, everybody. We're adjourned. Have a great month if I don't see you.
Thanks, Alan. Bye-bye.
All right, guys. Good seeing you.
Yeah, it's perfect.